Welcome back. You're listening to the Inspired Parenting Show, and I'm speaking with brain, mind, body expert Professor Barbara Bullard about the dramatic results achieved with Metamusic and Hemi-Sync and how it can help all of us achieve peak performance. Barbara, before the break, you mentioned about some of the work that's been done with children with autism. Say a bit more about that, because, I mean, this is something that autism seems to be on the increase, and these children specifically seem to suffer with things like sleep deprivation, sound issues, acute hearing, learning difficulties, etc.
I actually don't do a lot myself, since I'm not an autistic or an expert who works with autism. I work with an older group. But the people at the professional division of the Monroe Institute, and I'm part of that group, we meet about once every year to share ideas from all over the world. So one time I went to Puerto Rico to speak for Carmen Montoya, who has a whole retreat center there, and she had all of the parents and the therapists who work with autistics. I shared my ideas. That's when we were first starting to work with children with autism. And one parent went home. She took Remembrance with her. She went home. She put it in the boombox. And before she could turn around, her daughter, who was 5 years of age, who had never spoken, went over, wrapped her arms around the boombox, and started singing songs with words the first time in her life. And when the mother said, "Oh my gosh, this is so great, you can speak. Why are you doing this?" She said, "Well, I just feel like I can communicate now." And so they actually continued using Metamusic to bring out more of the vocabulary that was already there. So with Leluc and her aspects, the teachers were the ones who said that the behaviors and the focus really did about 2 years worth of growth, 2 years worth of improvement from just 6 weeks worth of incorporating Hemi-Sync once a day. So you still have to target which piece of Metamusic you use for somebody. I had the one example personally in my own life, but it was an adult 26-year-old Asperger's, and he had like 20 other names behind the titles of what they said he had. But when another teacher referred him to me, he could not take any test in the classroom. He was so anxious he had to go and do extra time in the Disabled Students Union. So we talked about what I would try and use. He came back 6 months later, and when I first met him, he wouldn't look at me. He did all of the gaze aversion of autistics. When he came back 6 months later, I barely recognized him because he really appeared to not have autism anymore. And he told me that in the last semester he had been able to take every test for 5 classes in the classroom and had gotten the highest grade in the class, and he had gone on to UCI now. And I kept asking him, like, "Oh, can we write this up in my book?" And he said, "Well, I don't know what it did for my autism, but it cured my ADD." And so we kept on talking, and it was just so spectacular, the results with him. But he kept saying, "I don't know what it did with my autism, but it cured my ADD." And, of course, for him, what he wanted was to be able to study, to actually take the test in the classroom without having this overwhelm of anxiety. A lot of teachers actually let the students bring in the Metamusic on their little Walkmans, and if they get agitated in class, they just let them go into their corner and use it, and it'll calm them down in 15 minutes. So there are many, many different ways of using it, but it's just not any music. It's actually designed music. Metamusic is designer music. So